Hi everyone, I'm Reading with Jack and today I'm here with a Top 5 Wednesday video about the banned books that I've read. If you didn't already know, September is Banned Books Month and this week in particular is Banned Books Week. And by banned books, it's basically books that have been challenged or prohibited in certain countries or cultures, even individual schools and libraries as well. More often than not, these books are challenged because of the themes they deal with. Sometimes they may be seen as offensive or inappropriate to certain readers. I'd just like to make a little disclaimer before I start talking about the books this week, and that is that I don't agree with all of the reasons behind the books being banned, and I'll obviously talk about them on an individual basis and what I think of things. However, I do not take away anyone's right to challenge a book if they feel that they need to. What's so good about literature is that everyone approaches it from a completely different perspective. We've got one reader who may think one thing is completely offensive, the other reader might not find it offensive at all, and I think it depends on your perspective on the world, who you are as a person as well, and it's absolutely fine to challenge books, but we also have a right to disagree with some of the books that have been challenged. We just have to appreciate the fact that they were challenged for a reason and everyone can have their own opinion about that. In fifth place this week is Northern Lights by Philip Pullman, which is the first book in the His Dark Materials trilogy. This book has most frequently been challenged for its political viewpoint and religious messages. Philip Pullman talks quite a bit about the church and how it can be quite controlling, how it can take away people's freedom, and I actually personally think that he does this in quite a subtle way. I don't think he's trying to offend anyone by his messages, and it's almost allegorical, it's almost like a hidden message. You can read the book on a basic level, and on the surface it's just a really enjoyable story and really entertaining, with great characters and a great fantasy world, but underneath that, if you analyse it more, you do find these messages, but I think they're real and they're honest, and I'm glad that he's not afraid to stand up for what he believes. I obviously understand that some readers may be religious, they may not find this appropriate or they may be upset about it, but I actually found it a really enjoyable read. I'm not religious, so maybe that affected my opinion, but I liked it as a book. Fourth place this week is going to Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, and this is actually really ironic because Fahrenheit 451 is about burning books, and through the burning of books getting rid of intellectual freedom. Therefore, by banning the book and challenging it, we are stifling intellectual freedom. So that's quite ironic, it's quite interesting to consider. This one deals quite a bit with drugs, smoking, alcohol, things like that. There are also a few moments as well when God's name is used in vain, so I think for religious people, again, maybe that could be offensive, but I think as a book in its own right, it was a really, really thought-provoking classic dystopia. I thought it was amazingly fascinating and a really, really good read. Third place is going to The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, and unlike the previous two books where I understood the reasons why they were banned, I don't really get this, to be completely honest. This was challenged for offensive language initially, which I don't really get because, to be honest, I don't see there's any offensive language in this book. Maybe a lot of metaphors offend people, or maybe Gatsby's repetition of old sport is offensive for some people. I don't really know. Apparently it's also been challenged for its sexual references, and I kind of agree with this a little bit, but I think they're so minor and they're definitely not explicit. I read the book quite a few times before anyone pointed it out to me, and I didn't realise until people had said. Great Gatsby is not an offensive novel. It's in fact an amazing representation of the 1920s in America, the Roaring Twenties. It captures an amazing atmosphere, it's very distinct with its tone, and even though there isn't really much of a plot to it, I just think it's a really good snapshot of this moment in time. It can almost be read as a historical novel. In second place is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, and I am very conflicted about the fact that this was challenged. Initially it was challenged for violence, which is undeniable. This is a book about children fighting each other to the death. Therefore, it is obviously violent, but this violence is so necessary to get the political message across. It talks about social hierarchy. Those at the top in the capital can control those at the bottom in the districts who are suffering, and the children that have to take part in these games. This violence is horrible and they are cruel, but the capital loves it and they love watching this as a form of entertainment. Suzanne Collins is not saying that violence is a good thing. She's using this violence to say it's bad and this shouldn't be happening. There should be more equality, there should be more appreciation for people of different classes, and it's not fair that people at the top don't have to take part in this while those at the bottom are suffering. The other reason why this was challenged was because apparently it's satanic and occult, and I don't particularly agree with this. In terms of religion is a foreign concept to the characters in this book. They don't use it to help them at any point in the Hunger Games, and I don't believe that God is mentioned at any point. As far as Satan is concerned, there are some horrific characters that are very, very cruel and very evil. Like President Snow, for example, is horrible. But Suzanne Collins is not supporting Satan. It's not a satanic novel. Finally, in first place this week is The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini, who is one of my favourite writers, but I definitely understand why it was banned, because I think it can be deemed quite offensive and quite hard-hitting for certain countries and cultures. One of the reasons why it was challenged was for its offensive language, which I definitely agree with. There is offensive language, but I think it's used in an appropriate way to make it more real. It makes the book seem more honest and more raw. You know, I really appreciate the fact that it's used in this way. It's also got a lot of references to war and violence, and as opposed to a lot of other books, like fictional books, this is a historical fiction book. Therefore, these events were real, and obviously for people maybe that were affected, they may not want to read about it. It's very hard-hitting and upsetting. And finally, there is a little bit of explicit content which drives the entire story, but for some people it may be inappropriate. Definitely for certain age groups, they may not want to be reading about this. I won't explain what it is just in case you haven't read this book and you don't want to be spoiled, but it's this horrific event in chapter 7 of the novel. It's so moving and horrible, but it needs to be in this book. It needs it. It's, again, raw, it's honest, it's real. I think overall the reason why I love this book is because it's so realistic and believable. I think the characters are so multi-dimensional. I think there are really amazing layers to them. The plot as well has been so well thought out, and it's a beautiful story with a really vivid writing style, some amazing description. One of my favourite novels ever. That's why I've given it first place for this week. So everyone, these are the books in my Top 5 Wednesday this week. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. Do you agree or disagree with the fact that they were banned or challenged? Also let me know in the comments if you made a video for this week's Top 5 Wednesday, because I'd love to hear your thoughts about banned books and the ones that you've read. But until next time, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all again in my next video.